Hello, everyone. As Eric mentioned, my name is Jihan Robinson. I'm the VP of Nonfiction Programming at Topic Studios, which is a burgeoning production company and financier here in New York City. Topic is a part of a larger media company called First Look Media, which sort of has 4 branches to it, including The Intercept, Field of Vision, which is a beautiful short-form documentary strand, Topic.com, which Anna oversees, and then Topic Studios, where I work. And I guess the ethos of Topic Studios is really about being a destination for filmmakers to come, where stories lead, the mission of our company, meaning that story leads, and we want to be able to support it in any format that it needs to be told, whether that's in short form, whether that's in podcast, in a feature film, both in nonfiction and fiction, but this is a documentary festival, so we're focused on fiction today. And we really champion ourselves and being there to support creative vision, to really supporting directors in seeing their vision through and being able to provide an incredible pathway for distribution or distribution on our really great platform, which is Topic.com. And I just want to apologize really quickly. My colleague Jeff Seelbach was unable to make it because of a family emergency, and thanks you all for being here.
Thanks, Jihan. As she mentioned, I'm Anna Holmes. I work with Jihan. I work on the digital platform Topic.com, upon which many of the things that the creators on the stage here have contributed to, but they're also working in formats that are off platform, meaning being distributed by other companies and on other platforms. I think, and I'm also the moderator, so I think the first thing I wanted to ask everybody, including you, Jihan, if you could, is what you do and some of the things that you've worked on. So I'm going to start with you, Jihan.
Okay, great. So you guys know what I do already, but what I do more specifically is that I work with filmmakers to either, finance, produce, and develop their ideas across long-form series and feature films. So some of the things I've worked on at Topic is Darius's film Black 14. Prior to Topic, I worked as an executive at various brands, including HBO documentary films, Participant Media's television arm Pivot, and Netflix. And some of the things I worked on at Netflix were such series as Last Chance U. Some films were Get Me Roger Stone and Casting John Bonet.
Cool. And Darius?
So I'm the director of Black 14. I'm mostly a writer, producer, director, and I also worked on Random Acts of Flyness this year as a writer-director, and I'm currently in pre-production on a new sports doc series with Topic, and I'm also prepping my first fiction feature film.
Actually, before we move on to Nadia, can you talk a little bit about what Black 14 is? I'll start, and then So it's a short that Darius did for Topic, which we published in March of earlier this year, and it's on Topic.com for anyone to see. I would like you to describe what it is and the genesis of it, if you can.
Yeah, so Black 14 came to me in 2015. I was presented with the story, and it's a story about this group of football players, 14 young men at the University of Wyoming in 1969, who were sort of protesting protesting racism, but also the racist behavior of the Brigham Young University football team. And in '69, when they decided to attempt a protest by going to their coach to ask for permission if they could wear these black armbands in solidarity, the coach fired all 14 of these players off the team. And instantly, not only was the coach against the players, but the president of the university, the governor, and essentially this whole small town in Laramie, Wyoming in '69. And so the film is an all archival, sort of like a 2-week fly-on-the-wall experience of what was happening from the moment they decided to protest leading up to the homecoming game, 2 weeks to follow. And so you sort of see firsthand the experience not only from the players' point of view, but also the coach and some of the people in the town, the governor, and it just sort of reinforces once again that even though this is 1969, in 2018, we're still dealing with the same situation in terms of protests, having a voice, speaking out against systemic racism, and even just how this is all sort of couched with it being around athletes, we understand that this is a societal ill that is ongoing. Yeah.
Thanks. So Nadia, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're working on, and also your connection to Topic specifically? We can talk about She's the Ticket.
Sure. So I am a cinematographer, director. I've mostly worked as a cinematographer on films like Trouble the Water, Trapped, Motherland, and then in the past year and a half or so, sort of started directing short format documentaries. I'm currently working on a mid-length short for Netflix and another Field of Vision short, and I directed and shot a digital series for Topic called She's the Ticket, about women that ran for office in response to Donald Trump's election.
And one of those episodes focused on Stacey Abrams. We released that last November, so I guess it was a year ago, which is seems like less time. Yeah, so it's interesting to look back at that episode about Stacey and then see how far she's come, and also what she's doing right now, fighting for all of the votes to be counted. Dan, hi.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do in the past and how you first came to at least Topic's attention, and how you work with us, but also what you do in general and what you're working on next?
Yeah, I'm a director, writer, producer, and there's a lot of hyphenates up here. I was a television producer for 20 years. I produced The Daily Show. I had a kids show on Cartoon Network. Silly stuff, fun stuff, a lot of comedy. About 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to focus more on directing. And so I sort of left that behind and began pursuing doc projects. I brought my first doc project to First Look, and they immediately saw it as something that wasn't a doc project. That a film, for me, it was a feature film. They immediately thought, oh, maybe it's a podcast. We developed it as both simultaneously. We went with podcast, and it turned into the podcast Missing Richard Simmons, which was super fun and exciting for me. And now I continue to direct. I'm actually doing Missing Richard Simmons has turned into an anthology series. That will be the first season, and now I'm doing another season which starts on Tuesday called Surviving Y2K. And then I have another season coming out in March. So they're documentaries, but they're audio documentaries. I'm also developing a couple more visual doc projects as well.
Okay, so I feel like this is a good time maybe that we can show the sizzle reel. Is that the right way to call it? That kind of outlines the projects that Darius and Nadia and Dan are referring to. So everything you just saw on the screen is available on topic.com except for Headlong Y2K, which will be available on Tuesday. So I guess, 3 days from now? So John, I'm actually going to ask you the first question, because you were talking about working with creators in multiple formats and the ways that Topic wants to work with creators in multiple formats. How do you guide creators when they come to you with an idea that you think could work in multiple formats? Like, how do you immediately take it to another development exec? I mean, how do you approach pitches that have actually potential in a wide range of areas?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're very collaborative as a creative team, and it's a small office. So I think, we want to support whatever the initial intention of the story, as imagined by the director. But as Dan mentioned with his documentary piece, Missing Richard Simmons, it's not dissimilar to how we approach some documentary feature film pitches that come in. Some of the questions that you have to ask are, what's active about the story, what's visual about the story, what sort of warrants telling the story in a visual medium versus being able to tell it maybe in an even richer way through audio, and sort of having that conversation. It's rare. We're not trying to sort of force or guide people into other formats, but sometimes we just don't want to sort of give up on a project in one medium because it might not have all the elements that we know from our experience can make a super compelling visual story and documentary. And additionally, that happens with our fiction colleagues as well. Some stories that will be amazing, nonfiction stories in a sense, but they're all backstory. There's again nothing visual to them, but they tell a rich story about something that maybe an element of the documentary might lean on a lot of recreation or a lot of talking heads. Could this story really be adapted and told in a really interesting way in fiction, because you can recreate the world that we won't necessarily be able to see in nonfiction? So these are the questions that we sort of walk through and talk through, within the walls of Topic, and, have really collaborative conversations with not only the creators, because again, we're there to really support and serve their vision, but we also want to give them the widest possible pathway to tell their story.
So Dan, I want to talk about Missing Richard Simmons, which I know you've talked about before, and how it went, the genesis from documentary film pitch to podcast. But I think the thing that even I don't know is, what was the argument made about why it should be a podcast, and was that a compelling argument at first? Did you resist it when the execs came back and said, we actually think this could be a story better told via audio?
They didn't come back. They said it in the room, like literally immediately.
Okay.
Immediately as I was telling them what the project was. Mm-hmm. I think it was less that it wouldn't work as a film. I think it was more that it would work in the audio medium for a couple reasons. Serial had come out a year or two before, which was a story that was told in real time. And the story that I was trying to tell about Richard Simmons was happening, and people didn't know about it, and it was literally happening. And so the format of a podcast would have allowed to tell that story in real time. You can make edits the day before. You can put it out and edit it the next day and change it, and it's like a Kanye album, and like nobody cares. And that really helps you to tell stories. And the second thing was, I was part of the story, and so somebody had to tell it, and it's really hard to do a documentary where the director is a character, and I was a little nervous about it. It's hard to pull off, and even if you pull it off once, it's really hard to pull off again. But in a podcast, somebody has to tell the story. There has to be a voice. And so they thought that would be a good way for me to do that.
Mm-hmm. And with regards to Y2K, was that something you also conceived of as a doc film project, or was that something that you conceived of after Missing Richard Simmons had come out and you were looking for another subject?
That came from after Missing Richard Simmons, and Topic said, what do you want to do next? And we did a deal together, and this was one of this was one of the things that's always been on my mind, because Surviving Y2K goes back to 1999 and follows about 5 to 8 stories for a couple years through the millennium and New Year's Eve and afterwards, to see what happens when you think the world's going to end and it doesn't. And one of those stories is mine. And so it was a personal project that I had been thinking about forever. If you have like a folder on your computer that's just like ideas, and they've been sitting there forever. That was just one of those things. And once I did a podcast, it just kind of opened my eyes to, there's all sorts of different ways to tell documentary stories. And so, no, it was immediately from the beginning a podcast.
And do you think that you thought about was the process of thinking about Y2K or how to structure it different because you thought of it as a podcast first and foremost? Did you have to think about it differently as you were developing it?
I had to think about it differently, but I don't know if anybody here, I'm assuming most people are filmmaking documentarians, but I really recommend going outside of your own box and thinking about what are the other ways to tell a story, because for me it just opened up a whole different world. People are more apt to talk to you because their visual isn't. People just don't like the way they look. They're people who don't want to be seen, and it's a little more subversive to go in, and people forget the microphone's there, and it's much more conversational. So it changes the types of stories that you can tell. Also, I would never tell my own story in a film. I don't want to do that. But there's something about the audio format that allowed it to be personal without it being sort of overbearing.
Nadia, so you mentioned that you're working on. Would you say it's a short for Netflix?
It's sort of existing in that mid-length space, which is like 35 to 40 minutes.
Okay. And is that the first time you worked with something of that length?
It is, yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about the challenges and rewards of that kind of mid-length space?
Sure. So the longest film I've made, I think, was probably about 18 minutes. So it's actually it's been a challenge to work within that space because, you feel like you can pack a lot into 35 minutes, but at the same time, it's not a feature. So it's really a balancing act of how much context does a film of this length need, and what do we show and what do we keep? And so it's an interesting learning curve for me working in that like 35, 40-minute space. But I love shorts and short format storytelling. I also probably can't commit to like a 3-year documentary. So I've been able to now actually, there's a space for people like me that, if you want to tell a story, a short can be anywhere from, 30 seconds to technically like 40 minutes. And so I kind of like working in that area.
And what will the full amount of time when this one, the Netflix one, is finished that you've been working on it? And can you talk about also how long you worked on She's the Ticket, which were episodes that were even shorter than 35 minutes? What were they, 10 to 12?
Some of them were, I think around even up to 14, but we did 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this mid-length short, I started filming like late May, and I'm in the tail end of the edit right now. So it's been, I guess, about 6 months or something like that, I think, for this project, which I'm ready for it to be over. I'm like, cool, we're done. For me, that's a long time. I'm a DP, so my life has been, 6 weeks on one film, and then you go to the next film, you go to the next film, and in a year, you're like, I worked on like 10 different movies, and you have 5 films in a festival. And, so being a director is a little bit more of a challenge because it's forcing me to focus on one thing at a time, and I'm learning how to do that. For She's the Ticket, it was an incredibly rigorous shoot. I think we greenlit in like late September, and we decided that we wanted our first episode to roll out before the election or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think I was on the road for 6 weeks straight, and the way it was scheduled was we had 5 different women that we profiled. And I went out and filmed with each one of them, and then we went back to them, and we filmed them again on Election Day. And during that time, we had many editors working simultaneously on the episodes that we would be able to. Our first episode had every character in it, so it was sort of like a preview of what you were going to see. And then for Election Day, I was with one of the candidates, and then we sent out crews with the others. So, I mean, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, actually. And I've done some pretty hard filming. But
Yeah, what were I kind of know what the challenges were, but like, were there positives that came out of being forced into that compressed production length, and that you feel like have loosened your muscles or in other ways going forward? Is there any? I guess the question is like, is there any benefit to having such a crazy schedule?
I think when you actually, I drew a ton of inspiration from the women that were running because they were working so hard, and every time I thought it was like 3 a.m. wake ups to get to the airport at 6 a.m. to go to the next location to film an entire day for like 2 days and then do it again. And it was so grueling. So every time I thought I was too tired, I was filming someone else that was doing something way harder and probably way more important than I was doing. And so I learned a lot from the women that were doing this. And then I think my takeaway was, I think one, we made a really great series that a lot of people have responded to in an incredibly positive way. That I think also gave people hope. This came out a year ago, so this was, after the election, all of us are still reeling in an interesting way and trying to figure out what we can do to respond to this moment. And so I always draw on my past experiences when I'm currently feeling like you hit that wall when you're making films. It's so hard, and you think you can't do another minute, another day, and then you just think back of the hard things you've already done and the rewards that have come from that. So,
what is that wall about? Is the wall like purely physical and intellectual exhaustion? Is it that you've lost, you can't remember what story it is you're trying to tell? Like, what is it? What is that wall about?
I think it's just that. I think it's the physical and intellectual stamina that it takes to make films, and I think everyone, we all have a different threshold, and so, and part of what we do is just keep pushing and pushing, and it's a muscle. You get stronger every time you do it. So, yeah.
So speaking of people who are doing multiple things at once, Darius, you're doing multiple things at once right now. You mentioned you're prepping for a narrative feature that you're going to shoot next year. You're doing the project with us, which is I don't think we can actually talk about it that much, but it has to do with sports, and it's in the doc space. You're working with Wyatt Cenac on his HBO show. How do you balance all of those things?
I'm still trying to figure that out. No, it's to me. I just realized one, I've been able to watch Spike, who is in his early 60s, for like the last 12 years, just as a student, and then also just as a collaborator early on the Evolution of a Criminal. And this man's work ethic is always astounding to me. The fact that even last year he was able to shoot Black Klansman, and She's Gotta Have It, and Super Bowl commercials, and the thing is he just doesn't have a lot of downtime to just mess around. He's really busy, and so I spent a lot of this summer just with my family and with friends and processing and sort of getting ready for the next 2 years of my life to be fully committed. And I just try to focus and compartmentalize the projects and not exhaust myself. But then I just realized I don't really have a lot of time just to chill as much as I used to. But this is what I was looking for when I was like 20 and 25 and hoping to have some type of career and an opportunity to do the work. So now that it's a possibility, I want to just make sure I execute well. And that just comes from just being focused and disciplined, which I'm not. So, I'm getting there slowly but surely.
I'm not trying to take anything away from Spike Lee, okay? But and you just mentioned he shot She's Gotta Have It and Black Klansman and the commercials, but he's working in like I don't know if genre is the right word. He's working in like fictional scripted spaces. You're doing both scripted and nonfiction, and so I want to know how your brain works, how you're able to shift between those formats or genres, for lack of a better word.
Well, for me, for the fiction, I feel like a lot of the fictional stuff that I do is informed by real life and informed a lot by just a lot of it, even though it's fiction, it feels like documentary. It feels like I'm making a surreal or an extended version of what a documentary is, in a way. A lot of the stories I'm drawn to, and so even the feature film that I'm doing next summer, which isn't really about education. It's similar in topic to the work that I'm doing with Wyatt Cenac for this season of the show. And so there's a lot of overlap story-wise and thematically that sort of unifies the pieces. And then some of the stories, this feature film has been a part of me for the last 10 years.
The one that you're prepping for
The one
next
that I'm
year.
prepping. And so it's a story that has been ongoing. A lot of times documentaries, I may work on one that's 1 year, or I may work on a project that's 3 years long. So it just depends. Some of the projects are longer than others, but for me, a lot of the themes are what keeps me sort of clear in terms of the clarity about the process, because a lot of them are sort of interconnected that way.
Can you talk about what the feature is about?
I would rather not.
Okay, fine. Yeah. I respect that. Yeah. So Jihan, in addition to feature doc pitches and docs, you're screening short doc projects and getting pitches for short docs as well. And I come from a journalism background rather than an entertainment industry or filmmaking background, and my impression when I was much younger was that shorts were ways for directors. They were calling cards, but they weren't things that directors wanted to keep doing necessarily, that they wanted to graduate to like the quote-unquote big leagues. And I wonder if you still think that's the case with the explosion of so many different platforms. Like, do you think there's a future for short form? Do you think that the doc directors that you're talking to and meeting with are excited by it as a form? Do they still think of it as a little bit less than?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of a calling card versus being its own unique medium, sort of yes and no, I think it depends. Like, certain ideas need that time to sort of incubate in short form a little bit to see if there's a there for a longer form. But I think the audience is definitely changing. I think demographically the audience is changing. I think the ways that people are consuming media these days are changing. More people watch things on their phones than they are, necessarily on their computers or on a big television screen. And as we know, the challenges with, watching things on the big screen in terms of behavior. So I think it's a remarkable boom time for short form content right now, and really great standalone films can be extremely impactful in short form. I think Darius's film Black 14 is one of them. You know, it's, as he mentioned, it's an entirely archival film, but one of the things that really drew us to the project is this notion of archival. And how archival was used in the past. And one of the things Darius was interested in sharing is who gets to dictate our history? Who are the voices that get to be heard? Because a lot of the stock footage that he found of that film, it's stuff that was never been aired by the news programs that were covering that particular story. That story was told by the point of view of the white coaches and the people in positions of power that were white, and not in the position, you know, not by the players themselves who had a very valid argument for the reasons that they were protesting. And it might have been difficult to be able to tell that story in a feature-length film. But in a short form film, it was extremely powerful because audiences are used to seeing archival who've been watching nonfiction for a long time, but it's kind of a hard buy-in to say, hey, sit for 90 minutes of an archival film because they're going to wait for a talking head interview or something to come in. So I think his film is a prime example of not only how powerful short form can be in terms of how you can push boundaries with the storytelling, but why it made sense as sort of a standalone piece versus, and it's automatically a calling card because it's great, like, you know. But I think there's a huge audience for short form right now, and we're super excited that we can support that type of storytelling, a topic.
So Dan, you did a short film that we licensed. We didn't commission it or acquire it, but we licensed it. And there was a phone call a couple days ago about this very panel, and they were all giggling because I had to say the name of the short, which is called "These Cocksucking Tears." Can you talk about the like why you made that a short, like your thoughts about short form doc filmmaking, if you'll kind of ever think you'll go back into it, and do you consume it, and if so, where?
I made These Cocksucking Tears because I needed a calling card. And it worked, and I would do it again. And I think, I mean, it was the first film I had made. It wasn't television. It wasn't somebody else telling me what to do. I made it myself with my own money. I did a Kickstarter, all that jazz.
Can you tell them what it's about?
Oh yeah, it's about a guy named Patrick Haggerty who wrote the first gay country music album in 1973, and then never made another album. And so it was about what happened to him in the 40 years since it was released. And it's a beautiful album. He was the son of a dairy farmer, had no business doing any of this, and it's openly gay and super graphic and beautiful. And we're still friends. It was because I needed a calling card, but it was my first film, and what I learned is that at least for me, making the film is not the point. The finished product is not the point. It's wonderful. But it's also how you're going to spend 6 months of your life. And so it's literally, it made me sort of recalibrate less about the finished product and really incorporating the idea of how do I want to spend the next 6 months, or how do I want to spend in the next year making Richard Simmons, or spend the next 2 years making the new podcast I'm doing. And so it started out as a calling card, and now sort of has become, if I can find something that is short form that I can do, and somebody will help me fund it, then I'll absolutely do it again. Absolutely.
So, Missing Richard Simmons started as a dog idea. It became reality as a podcast, and now it's being developed as a potential scripted television series.
Yes.
Where does it go after that?
Hopefully nowhere. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about these projects starting as one thing, and it's the same thing as is it a film or a podcast or a television show. Like, it can start as one thing and then become other things too. And it's being developed as a scripted project about me and my asking questions about Richard Simmons, but I'm not writing it. And so it's kind of a wonderful thing that, like, you create something that is really special for you, and then other people take a crack at it and try to see what they saw in it, and so it just becomes this larger thing that you're not squeezing it so tight. I made the thing I wanted to make, and I was so happy to do it, and now it's sort of wonderful to watch other people interpret that, and so it's definitely a model that I like just as the experience. Yeah.
Nadia, is there anything that you've worked on in the documentary space that you see having a life beyond what it is or what it's going to be, like either in a longer form but still documentary, or in a scripted form?
No. I think not yet. I think the topics I take on, I also, when you're looking at what works as a short, I think the topics I take them on because I feel like they work as short films, since I've yet to venture into the feature length space, and I don't know if I ever will. So yeah, I think they kind of live there, and yeah, I think that would be my answer. Yeah.
What about you, Darius? Do you like, for example, Dirt, which is a short that Darius did, which is a narrative short? Can you imagine that in a longer format, or any of the doc shorts that you've done being blown out into longer form pieces?
Some of the doc shorts, absolutely. I could see as feature-length pieces, but a lot of times, some of the moments that happen in a doc short, I can see as beautiful character moments for a fiction film. So I was working on this short film that I did 2 summers ago about these identical twin cowboys. That's not out yet, but there were just numerous times where we were just out there shooting them, just with the ropes and the hog hunting, and even the pictorial language, I would say, of the place of their farm, and just the whole experience to me. Even though it was documentary, I think filmically it felt like it could easily be fiction, or it looked like these people could walk right into a movie. And so sometimes if it's not a subject matter, it may be the style or the tone of the documentary that I feel like, oh, this could work for a fiction. Because similar with Dirt was shot with no lights, and it's fiction, but it's one person all on location in Texas, and it's no dialogue, and it could have easily been a documentary. But it is, there are some editorial tricks and things we're doing that's fictional-like, but it's it's an observational piece about this person's inner emotional life, and so that's stuff that I'm exploring in documentary all the time.
I want to ask the three of you about the themes that attract you the most, and if those are the themes that have been attracting you the most throughout your professional adult careers, whether you have moved into different places. So Dan, how would you describe the themes you're attracted to and ideas?
I'm definitely not a news hunter. I'm not trying to I'm not out there chasing Trump. I'm not doing things that are happening right now. I don't. Chasing that feels like a burden to me. This is a weird answer, and I would never say it in print or anywhere that somebody could go back and reference it. But
this is being videotaped.
Yeah, the themes that I find myself attracted to are less based on a topic and more based on a feeling. It's you read something. And like these cocksucking tears, that it was sort of a funny, sad story about this guy who was a bigger badass than I will ever be, and had done so much with his life to advance the things that he thought were important and social issues, but just cool as shit. And it was that feeling. And so when I have that feeling again about something I read or hear about, I do that.
Okay. For the films that I've directed, mostly I think one of the biggest questions is what do I do, right? There's so many things you can do, whether it's follow a news story or do something that's really personal. So I've sort of, a way for me to narrow it down has been, stories that are close to me in my life in some ways. So when I made the film Gavin Grimm Versus, which is about a transgender teen in rural Virginia who was set to go to the Supreme Court for the first transgender civil rights case in history, right? It was a landmark case. And what happened was when Trump was elected and Jeff Sessions decided to throw the case out of the Supreme Court. So I had been actually working on a film about Chelsea Manning, and one of the lawyers that had been working with Chelsea was also a lawyer on Gavin's legal team at the ACLU. And we, traveled a bunch and had dinners together, because you kind of, when you're making documentaries, you get thrown in with all these people you never met and you become fast friends. And he mentioned the case to me, and I was like, that would be a really interesting film. And Gavin was a very private teenager who was, thrown into the spotlight and planning to go to the Supreme Court, was like terrified, and was kind of talking to press, but in the way you talk to press, he was very media trained. And I knew that I had an access point through a mutual friend that, in this way that would allow me to get into the story in a different way. So that's how I ended up making that story. And then the film that I'm making now for Netflix is about Puerto Ricans who left the island after Hurricane Maria and ended up living in FEMA hotels in the Bronx. And it's the story about the friendship of these women that they developed in this hotel and sort of how they use that friendship to cope. And when FEMA pulls their assistance, they all get separated, and it's very emotional. So I'm from the Bronx. I always wanted to make films in the Bronx because I think it's just a unique place with all these amazing stories. And my mom's Puerto Rican. And so I had these connections and sort of this cultural connection. And there aren't any films about Puerto Ricans, and I was like, like many documentaries about Puerto Ricans, I think I've seen like one. And I was like, I want the world to know sort of like what this culture's like. And then we had this big news story, which was Hurricane Maria. And so I was like, well, if I pitch this, people might care about Puerto Ricans and the Bronx because it's like under the guise of this big news story. And so that's why I made that film that I chose to make now. So, every time you think about a project, it's like, you're going to live with this thing for a really long time, and it's really hard. So how much do you care about it? How personal is it to you?
Do you look for, do you regularly look for then hooks into stories about communities or people that haven't been told? Is that something that you're kind of constantly thinking about when you're not just thinking about themes you want to explore, but communities or people that you need to find something that feels more accessible to an audience in order to get them into it?
I think it's hard to find stories that in some way haven't been told. Like with the Gavin film, a lot of people kept saying, there's so many trans films, right, out now. And I'm like, yeah, but there's so many films about, false imprisonment and, whatever, the death penalty, there's like so many films about everything. So I think that it's interesting to try to find that, but that doesn't have to be, for me, it doesn't have to be like, no one's told this story before. I think there's so many ways to interpret like a story.
Thanks. What about you, Darius? What are the themes that you that are attracting you right now, and are they the ones that were attracting you 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think for me in my work, I like to respond to the fact that society tells us that most things are black and white on a superficial level, but I like to try to use cinema or film to explore the gray areas in my work. Specifically, I like to explore things that we lie about, the secrets that we keep. And even if we think about just our own performance just as a citizen in the country or on this planet, a lot of this is performative work, the dress, the choices we make, the decisions we make based on work, employment, environment. And because of the level of performance that we have to all do and within this system, there are a lot of secrets, and there are a lot of gaps in between truth and lies, and also just things that go unsaid that may not be lies. It just may not be spoken, just in terms of just exploring loneliness or fear or trauma or even joy, things like that. So I'm always trying to go to a place in my work and discuss something that we are running away from talking about, and I like to try to talk about it.
So the last question I'm going to ask before I open it up to the audience, and I don't expect that you guys are necessarily are going to answer this question, but Dan, you gave me the idea of that ideas folder on your desktop. Oh, yeah. I want to know what's in your ideas folder. All,
If I tell you that, then it's going to be in everybody's ideas.
that's the problem with asking the
Gosh,
question. Is there something in your ideas folder that like no one's ever gonna?
You know what it is.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, I do. That's true. Okay.
Which is the nice thing about developing a relationship is that every
That's
time I see
true.
her, she says, "What about this thing?" And
That's
I say,
right.
I swear.
But there's
I'm never
other
gonna talk
things in
about
your
it.
ideas folder, probably from like decades ago.
Yeah, I don't know, and it depends when you open up the ideas folder. Sometimes, I mean, they're all there, and you look at them. I can't think of anything in particular, but Y2K was definitely in there, and the one that's coming after that was definitely in there.
Okay.
And then it just changes depending. I mean, on November 5th of 2016, what was in that folder would look completely different on November 10th of 2016, right? So it just they grow. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Nadia?
I'm embarrassed to say I have no ideas.
Really?
I had like two big ideas, and I'm making them into films right now. So
That seems pretty like that seems
so
like the definition of success.
I guess ideas that aren't like being made. So it's like they were in the folder and now they're reality, which is awesome, right? Because you think like, I have a dream of doing something, and then you actually someone else believes in that idea, and they give you the resources and opportunity to make it. So my ideas folder is empty.
How do you feel when other people bring you ideas? Are you open to them, or do you like your own ideas?
She's the Ticket was brought to me as
Yeah.
an idea, and
Yeah.
I loved it. And and I'm in development on another project that someone brought to me, and I was like, oh my God, you know, this is a great idea.
Okay, so it's someone else's ideas folder too.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Darius? What's in your ideas folder that you feel free to share with us?
Well, I mean, I'm talking a topic about can I say, the fictional series?
I'm like looking at Jihan, like, can he talk about that?
Well,
Probably not.
Okay, well, there's something that's been in my ideas
So we can talk about our ideas
for a
we can
long
talk about
time.
your ideas.
Well, I'm the one who's moderating.
Not the ideas that now
I'll tell
you
you
guys-
afterwards what my ideas are. But yeah.
So don't.
Okay, so there's nothing else in your ideas folder from like way back when that this thing that's been bugging you that maybe will never happen because it's impossible or someone else did it.
No. And I keep an ideas folder for a long time. So it's everything that's in the folder I'm trying to make happen. And some stuff has happened and is in the process of happening, but a lot of it I don't want to talk about.
Okay. I actually think that itself would be a fun short doc, just to go to creative people and ask them to open up their ideas folder on their computer desktop and talk you through it. Huh? It'd be a very short doc? Okay. So we have a microphone, which is right here, to the, I guess, right of the stage, if you're facing the stage, and we can take some questions.
Hi, I'm curious about the level of funding support that Topic gives to these various projects. Could you give us an idea of how much money you give filmmakers for shorts or podcasts or feature-length docs?
I can't give you specific numbers, but what I can tell you is that, as I said before, we're there to serve story, right? So we want to be able to support filmmakers. So we do concurrently, while we are reviewing creative materials, we're also reviewing budget materials, and making sure that filmmakers have the resources to tell the story that they want to tell, and that the budgets are not bloated, but that we're not making people be scrappy either. Documentarians have to be scrappy enough as it is. So what I can tell you is that we're fair in terms of what we are financing to make sure that filmmakers have the resources to tell the stories they want.
And what's the best way for filmmakers with an idea to approach Topic?
I don't know. You can just talk to us. I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't know how most of the people make their way in just through all the different executives that come in. So, I can share my card with you afterwards, and if you have something that you want to share, we can talk about it.
Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Arthur, and I was curious about what stage Topic usually engages in projects. Is it always at development or later on as well?
We get involved at all stages. So from early development to production to finishing fund. So it really doesn't matter at what stage that you come in. Again, we're here to support filmmakers. So if you find us at a point in your production process where you're halfway done and you're looking for things to complete, we can be there. And if you have a seed of an idea that feels compelling that you need support for, we can be there for that too.
Cool, thanks.
Anyone else? Hi.
Yeah, just a question about the industry a little bit. Like, what do you guys think about hybrid documentaries? Do you think there's room for that, or do you think it needs to fall either in like be true documentary or a true narrative? Do you think there's a space where
Oh.
docs can exist?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, but I think it's like, what's your vision as a director? How is using narrative elements for your story serving the story? I think there's absolutely room and space to tell nonfiction stories in innovative ways. We're seeing a lot of people playing and blurring between the lines, not only in nonfiction and people using fiction elements, but you look at shows like Narcos that, have all this archival footage, in their format of their show. And, so I think there's a lot of blurring that's happening on both sides of nonfiction and fiction. So I think it's just about how does it serve your story? What's the usefulness of, sort of employing these other devices?
Can I add to that? Actually, if you've ever been to the True False Film Festival, it's incredible. It's a documentary film festival, but it's all about blurring that line. It's in Columbia, Missouri. It's not expensive. All the theaters are right next to each other, so you can see like 5 in a day, and just like till you're sick of film. But people are doing such amazing stuff, blurring those lines, and people just eat it up. I think it's for sure.
What do you guys think are the best examples of hybrid docs?
Robert Greene is amazing.
I mean, I like The Imposter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love the film. It was super meta, but I love the film I worked on, Casting Jean Benet, which was on Netflix, which was using a lot of sort of different devices to try to tell a story that was super meta, but that was all Kitty Green, and her vision. Go ahead. We actually don't do impact campaigns. Oh, wait. Oh, repeat the question. Okay. The question was, how important is impact? How do we interweave impact campaigns into the films? Yeah. We actually don't. I think there's actually a misconception about Topic that we're focused on only things that are focused on social impact. Obviously, I think every documentary is socially relevant or can have social impact in some way, even if the intent isn't to focus on issues with a capital I. So we would be fully supportive of a filmmaker where impact was an important part of why they were making their film, but we don't specifically generate impact campaigns or finance impact campaigns. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about relationships you might have with some of the other business partners like The Intercept? I mean, you talked about cross-platforming, or maybe a project that comes out in one form and then develops all under your umbrella into something else?
We work very closely with our other partners under the First Look Media umbrella. The majority of the IP that's developed on The Intercept and Topic.com are things that First Look Media actually owns. So one of the big parts of our business is thinking about how can we sort of take that great reporting and work with the journalists that we have in-house to pair them with filmmakers to develop their articles into feature films, documentary series, documentary features. So we actually have quite a bit in development on the nonfiction side that have been inspired by Intercept or articles on Topic.com that we're working very closely with the journalists on. And so that's another, I think, exciting opportunity that we feel that we have, because we're employing the sort of brain power of not only the filmmakers that come to work with us, but sort of the amazing journalists that are working under our media company.
Yeah, there are articles on topic. I can't speak for The Intercept because I don't work at The Intercept, but there are pieces that we commission and run on topic.com that we know have IP potential for the studio side, either for the scripted, TV and film side, or maybe even the doc side. That isn't to say that we only are assigning or commissioning pieces that we think can be made into something else, but we do think about it. And there's also been short doc series that we've developed and distributed on topic.com that we are looking into in terms of turning them into longer form pieces, things that have done very well in short form that it isn't that they were they weren't made as proofs of concept, but like they got at something that we think is worth fleshing out more in a longer form. So the other brands under the First Look Media umbrella, like the Nib, which is a political cartooning site, we've worked with them to make an animated series called The Nib, a short digital animated series that's very similar to the static cartoons you see on the nib.com, but is just moving. Political satire, usually making fun of President Trump. And with Field Division, well, maybe you can talk about how we work with Field Division when we work with Field Division, because they are, another doc entity, but their mission is different, but we do collaborate with them on things. And
Field Division is the brainchild of Laura Poitras and Charlotte Cook, who are incredible filmmakers and executives, and I don't know if they fashion themselves as executives, but incredible producers and filmmakers in their own right, and have really, built an incredible strand. One distinction to make, I think, about the different parts of our companies at The Intercept and Field Division are actually nonprofit entities under the First Look Media umbrella, and Topic Studios is a commercial studio. So Field Division can work with filmmakers in incredible ways. They have a fellowship program for emerging filmmakers. They do incredible short film work. They're granting. So they have, and I can't speak specifically to everything that they do, but we work very closely with them. But I think our missions are slightly different. I don't know if we'd go so far as say a mission, but like we're a commercial studio, so we have to sell. We have to be able to make sure that whatever we're getting involved with will have a life cycle within the marketplace in some way. And so Field Division, I think, can be there to sort of incubate and nurture filmmakers and ideas in a way without the kind of pressure that we have at the studio, to try to make sure that we can find a place for it in the world, which I think gives them incredible freedom and incredible opportunity to support great talent. Not that we can't, but it's a different kind of thing.
Yeah. I just got the 2-minute warning. So if we have one more question, we can do that, or we can wrap it up. I'll just see if anyone else has a query. No? Oh, go ahead.
If you have a short film that you want to turn into a feature, would you recommend it being okay to put the short out there publicly, or not to do that because maybe I don't know, it would ruin some of the excitement or like information?
Can you repeat the question?
And so if you have a short film that you want to make into a feature, would we recommend not putting the short out because it might take off some of the excitement around the feature? And I think my answer would be no. I mean, I think this is the documentary film community is an incredible community, and if there is a short that you have out there that's going to connect you with more people, more resources, a larger network of people that will support you, that can help you with the feature, that whether that's creatively or otherwise. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I don't know what some of the filmmakers think.
Yeah. I would just say that, don't put your best scenes in the whole film in the short that you put out. And also, how long is that short? So, you don't want to make it a 35-minute short, because then no one's going to, think it should be funded to be a feature. So, yeah, but, OpDocs does that, where they partner with filmmakers who are making feature-length films, but then they might put out a shorter version of that. And it works great to, spark interest in the idea.